for you. Now, we are talking, of course, we are naturally speaking this morning. Our great friend Kelli Kieselbach, nutritionist and naturopath, is joining us on the line. How you doing, Kelli?
Yeah, I'm doing really well, thank you. How are you going?
I'm on the recovery. It is
Yes,
the road to recovery, that's for sure. So,
yeah.
these colds and flus this winter seem to be particularly severe. So, they haven't been nice at all. But look, lovely to be back on the microphone and lovely to be chatting to you this morning. And, of course, look, another big topic. We love to cover the big ones here on a Friday morning when we are naturally speaking. And this morning we are going to be talking about nutritional deficiencies. So, how would you describe the term nutritional deficiencies?
So a nutritional deficiency is basically when the body lacks enough of a specific vitamin, mineral, phytochemical that it needs to function well or to function at its best. So when we talk about nutrition or nutrients, they are providing the body with either building blocks or information that our body needs to actually function well and perform all of its biochemical processes that it needs to.
Yeah. So I guess, the next question really then is, what are some of the most common ones that are out there that we know of?
Well, the most common worldwide is iron deficiency, but we're also seeing a big problem with, quite a range of nutrients now. So vitamin D is a big problem. So even though we live in the sunny country in Australia, it's actually, I think it's something like 1 in 3 people have a deficiency in vitamin D, and there's a number of reasons for that. Also, things like B12 and other B vitamins, zinc, iodine is a big problem as well.
Hmm.
And we've lost a lot of our, some of the iodine sources that we used to have. So we used to get some iodine through dairy and other things. That's no longer really the case. So even though in Australia we're lucky enough to have plenty of food, actual nutrient intake and ability to get those nutrients in um, is not great, and there's a number of reasons for that.
Yeah, it's interesting you mentioned about the vitamin D deficiency being so common because, as you mentioned, we do live in one of the sunniest countries on the planet. Definitely
Yeah,
one of definitely the driest, I think it is. And but yeah, there's it's a kind of a two-edged sword, isn't it? With that kind of weather, we're also then warned, hey, don't spend too much time outdoors, and if you're going to be
that's
out there
right.
for prolonged periods of time, make sure you cover the body in the suntan cream and put the long sleeves and everything else. Try and keep your skin out of the sun. But look, I'm sure there'd be ways that we could try and build that up safely, wouldn't there?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's just about being very strategic. So picking and choosing the times that you do go out in the sun and making sure that when you do go out, it's not in the heat of the day.
Hmm.
Obviously, that's going to change a little bit from winter to summer, depending on where you are in Australia. That varies quite a bit. So where I am in South Australia, I mean, now is the perfect time to go out and soak up the UV, but it's 10 degrees here at the moment, so no one really wants to do that. But as the weather warms up, trying to go out sort of first thing in the morning, getting that morning sun sort of before 9:30, and then after 5 p.m., if you're in daylight savings, um, then those are the best times.
Hmm.
And obviously just being really smart and common, having common sense. It can also be tricky for people who work indoors or have a
Yeah.
darker complexion. There are other risk factors as well. But yeah, trying to find ways around it and just making sure that if you do fall under any of those high risk categories, getting it checked every so often. It's a fairly simple blood test. So
Yeah.
yeah, trying to monitor that.
Yep, some good advice there for sure. Now, talking about nutrient deficiencies, how can we test for them if we're thinking to ourselves, oh, I wonder if I've maybe do have something like that. I've noticed a few weird things going on. How can we test for it, and what should we know about testing?
Yeah, so look, testing's a tricky one because, there's a lot of minerals and a lot of vitamins.
Hmm.
Only a handful of them have really easy, accessible tests. So we can easily test for iron,
Hmm.
and we can easily test for vitamin D, and B12 is another one. a lot of other nutrients, it's not that reliable, or the tests are not that accessible. So they're not covered by Medicare. So things like, zinc, you can get a blood test, but, it, unless you really understand how to interpret it, it's something that we would look at sort of in the context of the person. Do they have signs and symptoms of, zinc deficiency as well? So it's really about putting the pieces of the puzzle together. So B12, iron, vitamin D, we can look at the blood test results for that. Everything else, we're sort of looking at a combination of, signs and symptoms. What does the diet look like? What are the needs for that person? Because that's going to be different depending on their life stage, their, male, female, health conditions, all of that.
Sure.
And trying to put the pieces of the puzzle together and, understand whether they're actually likely to be getting what they need.
Yeah, now look, we always eventually get around to talking about how important diet is. And it really is, probably the best form of prevention is exactly that. Having a great diet is always going to be at the top of the list. But even in that, we do know that people can be nutrient deficient, can't they? And so why is it that you find that is the case sometimes?
Yeah, so there's a number of reasons why someone who is, on the surface looks like they're eating a really good, nutritious, balanced diet might end up with some nutritional deficiencies. One is that a lack of nutrients in the food. So our food has changed to have a reduced number of, vitamins and minerals. And this could be due to changes in farming practices, so modern farming practices. We also transport a lot of our food. So food is often sitting on the shelf longer or sitting in a truck for longer. Chemicals that are used that can antagonize some nutrients as well. So if you're eating conventional, non-organic fruits and vegetables and that kind of thing. We also in Australia tend to have very, very few of us actually eat enough fruits and vegetables and, whole food. So, we hear this phrase, we're overfed and undernourished. So,
Right.
We're eating a lot of food, but we're not necessarily nourishing ourselves with that because we do tend to eat more refined pastas and grains and breads and that kind of thing. The second reason why you might be eating presumably quite healthy, but still have nutritional deficiencies is because of your genetic needs can have an influence, health conditions. So if you have certain health conditions, the demand for certain nutrients might be higher. Also life stages. So usually stages of growth. So during infancy, pregnancy, breastfeeding, and adolescence actually is a really high risk time for nutritional deficiencies, partly because of the growth and partly because teenagers tend to go out and eat more fast food and,
Right.
that kind of thing. So there's a number of reasons why someone still might have deficiencies, despite on the surface looking like they're eating healthily. And medications would be the other one as well. So if people are taking pharmaceutical medications, they can displace certain nutrients or block certain nutrients. And the same with like smoking or drinking a lot of alcohol, vaping, those kinds of things are going to use up nutrients much faster, increasing the demand.
Yeah, we are talking with our great friend Kelli Kay, our naturopath and nutritionist this morning, looking at nutritional deficiencies and some of the ways that we can go about fixing those things. We'll take a short break and we'll be back with Kelli right after this. It's way out, 22 minutes after 8, and we are talking with nutritionist and naturopath Kelli Kieselbach is with us this morning, and we're talking about nutritional deficiencies. Now, Kelli, we're having a look at some of the key nutrients that we can be low in. So, looking at iron, B12, and vitamin D, why are they so important?
Yeah, well, so iron and B12, we'll talk about those first. They are involved they're blood builders. So they are involved in building our blood and supporting our hemoglobin. Also, our white cells. So they're really important for our immune system, as well as our energy levels. When, one of the key signs of deficiency when they drop is that you can become quite
Mhm.
fatigued. They're also, particularly B12, is really important for the nervous system and really important for brain health. So as we age and our cognition, um, or even in our younger years, really, it's really important to help with cognition and stabilizing mood and that kind of thing as well. Vitamin D is a really important anti-inflammatory. So most people think vitamin D bones, and yes,
Mhm.
that's true. It is really important in building and maintaining our bone health, but it also has a lot of other functions in the body. So it's anti-inflammatory. It helps with our mood as well. So some people might have heard, the winter blues,
Yep.
or the sad. So when over that winter period when your vitamin D drops, that can have an impact on your mood as well. So it has quite a number of important roles, very important for your gut as well. Mm.
Yeah, and I guess one of the things that we look at as well is again, iron, B12, vitamin D. We know that they're critically important. With the iron deficiency there, would that be more on the women's side as opposed to men, or is it kind of even out fairly well between the two sexes?
It is more common in women.
Hmm.
It was more common in menstruating women,
Yep.
but it definitely can happen in men as well, and very common in children and adolescents, especially fussy eaters.
Right.
Other people who would be at risk would be, vegans and vegetarians because it is a nutrient, as is B12, that is more commonly found in animal products.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, and more easily absorbed from animal products.
Right. That's
Um,
probably the key,
so
isn't it?
yeah, yeah. In saying that, though, I think it's really important, just in terms of who's at risk, it is more common in women, but it's not always just down to menstruation and blood
Hmm.
loss. It's really important that we get investigated for why we're low in iron. So, I hear a lot of stories of women being dismissed. Oh, it's just normal for women. It's if you're eating meat, if you have a really healthy, balanced diet, you're not bleeding super heavily, it's not normal.
Hmm. Yep.
So it's important to just have that investigated, make sure your gut's all good, and sort of have your diet assessed and look at what is going on there.
So, what are some of the symptoms that we might see if we're sort of low in those ones?
Yeah, so with iron and B12, actually, and vitamin D, you could see a drop in energy.
Hmm.
So there would be fatigue, and maybe you feel like you need a lot more sleep. Anxiety and depression is common as well. With B12, you might start to experience some peripheral neuropathy. So you might start to experience some pins and needles or numbness in your extremities. Um, you would also could experience with iron some nausea and headaches, common dizziness, heart palpitations could be common as well. Sometimes people are low when they don't have a lot of those symptoms. Um, so it can, or people just think they're tired because they're working a lot. So it is important to have that checkup every so often. With vitamin D, you might see so those mood changes, difficulty sleeping, um, changes in bone health. That one's a little bit uh, harder to assess, I
Hmm.
would say. So with that, again, taking that holistic approach and looking at, what is the likelihood of that person having good vitamin D and just keeping an eye on it.
Yep, absolutely. Now, how can we? Oh, this is, I guess, the $64,000 question this morning is how can we
Yeah.
go about getting these really important nutrients into our diets?
Yeah. So I think first it's about educating on the types of foods. Obviously, there's a whole host more nutrients that are also really important, but just focusing on these ones, they do come from animal sources. With vitamin D, it's primarily produced under the skin when the UV rays hit us. So that one, is about getting out into the sun, but we do get a little bit of vitamin D in things like eggs and milk, egg yolk and milk, but really small amounts.
Hmm.
With your iron and B12, They primarily come from, your meat sources. Vegetarian sources, you have to be super intentional. So, because you can get iron and B12 from some vegetarian sources, but they're generally in smaller amounts and they're harder to absorb. So, with B12, you might get a little bit from, fermented foods, and with iron, you will get some from things like legumes. I think off the top of my head, some like dried apricots. And spinach, that kind of thing. But yeah, it is harder to absorb. So it's really important that if you don't eat animal foods, that you educate yourself around other ways of getting that in.
Yeah. So I guess one of the biggest things really is to if you do notice any signs and symptoms of these kind of things, probably maybe going and getting some bloods done, having a bit of look at some of your levels, particularly the vitamin D levels, because they are really important for. I mean, there's so many functions that controls that vitamin D in the body. So again, probably get some bloods and things like that done, and maybe even see someone like yourself who actually deals with these kind of things. How often, though, you being a practitioner, how often would you sort of treat these types of deficiencies in your clients?
Well, it's extremely common. So very often. It's very, they are very common. So, I'm looking at this all the time. So I will always be, trying to look at people's pathology results, but I'm also assessing them in the context of, what's that person's health look like? What signs and symptoms are they experiencing? What does their diet look like? What is their genetic background or their ethnicity? Because that can come into it as well. And trying to put the picture together, and also in that looking at other key nutrients that the individual in front of me may or may not be getting. So it's really about trying to assess it in the context of that individual. And then when it comes to treating it, yes, supplementation is appropriate in certain, circumstances, but it's about knowing what forms of supplements, what dosage is going to be appropriate for that person. And it's also about digging a bit deeper to the cause. Why is this person deficient? Is it just because they're not getting enough in their diet? Or are there other things going on that might be contributing to this? And this is particularly key, I think, when it comes to iron, because there are so many nuances about, how iron is regulated in the body. We don't want too little of it, but we also don't want too much. And so that's why it is so hard to absorb. And so it's about educating people on, if you're taking a supplement or if you're eating those foods, the timing is important. The other foods that you combine it with is important. So it's educating on all these different factors to try and get people long-term results, so they don't keep having this cyclical issue of, oh, my iron's dropped again, and go back on supplements, off supplements, back on supplements, off supplements.
Yep.
So yeah.
Getting them off the merry-go-round, hey?
Yeah, that's the aim.
Absolutely. Now, look, if people want to follow along with you, maybe read some of your incredible resources that you've got, how can they do that?
Yeah, so I'd love you to join me on my socials. So Instagram is Kelli K_naturopath. So it's Kelli with an I, and then Kelli K Health on Facebook. You can also jump on my website and access a whole host of free resources there, and that's at kellik.com.au. So KELLIK.com.au. And you can also book, I do offer free phone appointments as well for people who want to have a bit of a chat about their own situation, or want to explore a little bit more about how working with a nutritionist or naturopath looks, and whether it's something for them as well.
Sure. Awesome talking to you as always, Kelly Kay. It's been an eye-opening one again with those nutritional deficiencies. So, guys, if you want to have a bit of a listen back to this one as well, you can jump on the Rima replay probably a little bit later on today, and it will be up there, particularly in the Brekkie Show slot there. So check it out. Kelly, thank you so much. We'll look forward to chatting to you again next month.
Excellent. I look forward to it.
That's Naturopath and Nutritionist Kelli Kieselbach there joining us this morning. And, of course, we are looking at those nutritional deficiencies. Stay with us. We got the 8:30 news coming up next.